Michael Malone, Bruce Brown, Jamal Murray speak with the media. We talk about the history of the Nuggets and why the finals present an opportunity to honor a history overlooked. Plus, rest versus rust. And yeah, I got thoughts on the whole media conversation. All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys being with us, whatever platform you choose. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed on the Gametime app. We appreciate you guys making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys being an everydayer if you are, because the everydayers are what make the show. Folks that are hanging out with me on a Friday night. Logan Forseth, Leo Clayman. Haven't seen Leo in a while. Big Honey hanging out with us. John P. Damn it, Bobby is hanging out with us. Robert Rodarte back with us. Lots of folks hanging out with us in the chat. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Friday night. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and I'm one of the co-hosts here at Locked On Nuggets. Adam Mars is off tonight. It's date night, so good for him for carving out some time. Adam's obviously got an incredibly busy week. If you missed it, Adam was on the Low Post with Zach Lowe. Make sure to check that out. He was on the some sort of city podcast that you can check out in his feed as well. And of course, the DNVR show daily. He's got lots of content over there. So if you're missing Adam, you're not in need. You have lots of Adam thoughts to get you through. So the plan, on a little bit of programming note here, I'm doing this show now in the event that the Celtics win Game 6. If the Heat close out Game 6 on Saturday night, I will drag Adam on to do a reaction pod, and we'll start doing first thoughts on a Heat matchup. If this goes to 7, then obviously we'll have to wait till Monday before we start doing real finals planning. It's going to screw up a lot of content for a lot of folks. So we'll see if that one goes 7, like a lot of folks are expecting it to. On today's show, I want to talk about 4 all Nuggets, which is a comment that Michael Malone made at practice today. We'll get some, availability today. We'll get some other notes from availability from Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, those kind of comments. I was at the arena today. We'll go into a little bit of the rest versus rust. I have an interesting trend you guys should be aware of before we get into those conversations about rest versus rust. And in the final segment, I'm going to give my take on the whole media combo. I wrote an article on the Action Network, which you can catch on the app or on the website or on my Twitter feed. But I have some more thoughts I wanted to talk about on that. Let's get started. So today, Michael Malone met with the media. This is kind of how it works. So the Nuggets don't, like, the league does not mandate practice. Like, you get to choose when you practice. And also, if you're in the finals at this point, you're not mandated for it to be like, oh, you need to have X amount of like during the year, you have to have X amount of practices. And if you have practice, you have to have availability if it's a formal practice, right? And like, you have to do those in order to make sure the league doesn't bark down your throat. Now, the court was set up today and the curtain was closed. So the Nuggets were doing some work. Like, they were probably in there working on whatever. But we also just had, like, there was no formal practice. We weren't allowed in to see anything there. So it was more likely they were just doing like a walkthrough of whatever it is that they wanted to go over, doing like team meetings and stuff like that. Jamal met with the media, Bruce Brown met with the media, and Michael Malone met with the media. And Malone was asked about, somewhere along the way, he was talking about kind of what the finals means for the franchise. And that he mentioned, like, it's not just like, this is an opportunity. And he said 4 all Nuggets, which is, like, to me, was a really funny phrase. Like, just like the fact, like, it's Nuggets is funny, right? But like 4 all Nuggets. But what's cool is, like, Wilson Chandler replied to George Karl and said he's, working on getting into town, hoping to be at the game. And, like, this is an opportunity in the finals. The team has to focus on winning the thing, but the franchise has an opportunity to kind of honor its history, because it doesn't have an illustrious history. It doesn't have a great history. It doesn't have a storied history of championships and heroes, but the players that have played for this franchise mean a lot to the fans that have watched them. And whether that's Alex English, or whether that's David Thompson, or whether that's Dikembe Mutombo, or whether that's Kenyon Martin or Wilson Chandler, or Carmelo Anthony. Now, I don't know if Melo's going to be around, right? Like, that's still like a real kind of tricky one. I would imagine after the retirement, he probably doesn't get booed. Like, I would imagine if there are boos, it's probably pretty quiet on that side. But like, this is an opportunity during these finals to honor some of that history, to go back and honor those eras. And like, there should be programming that's made by the Nuggets in terms of video clips in the Jumbotron or whatever that does kind of pay homage to the history of the Nuggets. And like, it's not just the very distant things that I think. Dan Issel is another one. Will Barton, Gary Harris, those guys, Paul Millsap, those guys should absolutely be invited because they have more to do with this team than those other guys, than like the players from the distant past, right? And like, if they don't want to come because it's painful, totally get that. Like, if Will's like, it's too raw, totally understand. Would not blame Will a heartbeat for that. But like, the invitation should be made, right? Because those players were part of it. Robert Rodarte says, let's do it for a Flalo. Yeah, let's get spell check. Oh, let's do it for Corey Brewer. Woo! Kenneth Fareed. That's another one. Manimal was like super popular, right? So there's all this like stuff here. Orange Soda says invite Monte Morris. I would imagine Monte's gonna be around. Like, I'm gonna say that. Don't know about J.R. Smith. That one's different. Don't know about Ty. That's another one that's out there. But there is all these kind of opportunities, I think, to honor the history of the franchise. Because look, part of what happens now is like, your franchise history becomes more important because your team made the finals. And it becomes even more important if your team wins the title. Like, should they win the finals, their history will now become a little bit more important because now it's the history of a team that's won a title, which is just inherently more valuable than these other franchises, which I don't think that's fair, but it's how it is, right? Like the Timberwolves or the Grizzlies or these other franchises that haven't won. Like, you're in an opportunity to kind of honor them. Honestly, another one that I think would be Earl Boykins, as somebody else mentioned. Timofey Mozgov, for sure. I think Andre Miller should absolutely be invited and like should be like in a pretty big position. And one of the reasons I say that is because when like Andre is part of the G League affiliate, right? So like, there's a whole connection there. This is like a real important. Ooh, Chauncey would be awesome. That's another great one. This is a great opportunity to invite Chauncey. Like, they should absolutely get it. Again, there's an opportunity here to invite and welcome in the Nuggets of past in this moment when this franchise that they played for is on this stage. And it's good to like take this moment and appreciate that, to promote the idea of the franchise being important, of the history being important, of what the fans have loved throughout the years, of that being important. Freddie says Bones. Well, probably not. We'll get to that in a second. Ooh, Hurricane says Nene. Okay. Abdul Rayouf, another great one. That would be an excellent selection as well. There's all these kind of opportunities to honor the past. Hurricane also says Birdman, another one. So I think that these opportunities are rare, but it is very cool when you're able to kind of point to it and take a moment to celebrate. You don't want to go too overboard, right? You don't want to act like, wow, we're just so thrilled to be here. You want to act like you've been there. That's important, but that's also for the team. I think for the franchise, this is an opportunity to recognize where it's at and to recognize the most important moment in franchise history, because this is what it is. This is the most important moment in franchise history. They've never been here. Think about that. Like, your team, the team that you root for every night, the team that you have suffered through so many boring, terrible games, is having the best moment of its existence. This is the best moment of its existence. That's pretty amazing. So I think that is just interesting to hear from Malone talking about that and like wanting to welcome everybody back in. And like, this is going to be one of the interesting things to kind of watch, is like Malone evolving from coach of the moment into like such a big part of franchise history that it takes on a different weight that can go sideways pretty quickly if you ask, Mike Budenholzer or Monty Williams or any of these other coaches. But it's just kind of something interesting. Asher says, I am just surprised at how little the Nuggets have honored their history. Hasn't been a strong point. It's been a problem. I think a lot of that is honestly big. I think that's there's twofold, right? I think one part of that is that like I don't think that there's not like a lot of players that have stuck around, and so there's not like a lot of opportunities to do that. I think two, they started doing a couple of years ago when they were honoring Kmart and when they were honoring Dikembe and like they were doing this. I think that they've had a hard time with the fact of like there wasn't an opportunity really to do it because it didn't feel like honestly the Nuggets were not all that relevant on a national scale or in like a historical context. Those teams were loved because all teams are loved by somebody, which I try and hold in my heart pretty close. But that's very important. Leo says JJ Hickson. Absolutely not. It's not absolutely not that guy. If the Celtics advance, Gallo will be there. That's true. That's an interesting one. If Boston doesn't make it, do you extend the invitation to Gallo? That's an interesting one there. All right. On the other side, there's some other comments that I want to get to from Malone, as well as some comments from Jamal Murray and Bruce Brown. We'll talk about those things on the other side. First, I'm going to tell you about the Gametime app. Look, if you're in the Denver area and you're going to be looking for those tickets to the game, you're going to want to check out the Gametime app because it's probably going to be the best way for you to get the tickets on short notice because it's going to be hard to find them on the pre-sale market. So make sure that you check out the Gametime app if you're trying to get into the building. It's going to be the best way for you to get those flash deals on last minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area, whether for Nuggets games or other games. If you're trying to catch a Rockies game, if you're going to a Rapids game, or you're going to one of the great shows that's coming through. Elijah Schlesinger is coming. I love her. She's great. She's coming in the fall. You can get tickets on Gametime. Football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed on the Gametime app. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Friday night going into Saturday. Just a little weekend coverage for you. It's talking about more folks that should be invited. John E. and Andrew Boley both say Jameer should absolutely be invited and would show up. Maybe. I don't know what is Jameer's coaching or what he's doing or if he's home with his son back from college or what. Invite Bezdelic. That's not a bad idea. A couple other notes from media availability. So Malone, I will say this. Malone was kind of asked about the culture of the team and all these types of things. And he talked about like, we want guys that want to be in the gym, that want to buy in. And we've done a really great job doing that. And then he paused and was like, and front office, I think we've also done a great job of, if you're not in those kind of mindset, if that's not your priority, of getting those guys out. Now, that's obviously a Bones point. It's not just a Bones point, though. I think that there are other guys that have been with the team that are no longer with the team that were kind of in line with that. If you were very focused on, and like this is the reality, if you were very focused on where your career was at and where your career was going, this was not the team for you for the past 3 years because this team had goals of going to a championship level. And that requires sacrifice from everybody involved. Everybody's got to sacrifice. And so I don't think it was just Bones. I think there were other players in his mind as he went through that. And I don't think it was necessary for him to make that dig. Like, you're at the top of the mountain. You don't have to land that one. You won. Like, you won. Like, Michael Malone has won in these playoffs. I think Nikola has gained the most respect from those that did not respect him. I think Michael Malone has gained the most respect in terms of people that did not have an opinion. Jamal is like somewhere in the middle of that. But like most people would just be like, yeah, he's the coach of the Nuggets. He's fine. Like pretty good, whatever. And now there's like a genuine feeling of like Malone's really good. But like doesn't need to be, those just don't have to do it. It's not necessary. He was asked about the Lakers thing too, in the context of like the narrative of being overlooked and all that, and if that would carry through. Basically, the question is like, Are you going to keep that up? Are you going to try and like, it's essentially, you're going to try and drag that into like another talking point into the finals? And he was kind of, and he said like, look, if you're still talking about the Lakers, that's on you. They've gone fishing. We're still playing. And that's like the last one. There is kind of this idea in like Lakers fans predictably are making it about themselves. And the reality is like, to me, when I was there, Malone was like wanting to move on. That was like the Lakers are done. We're still playing. That's it. It was basically just like a victory stamp of just like, we won. That's it. Like regardless of whatever. Bruce was asked about free agency and said that there are all these reports of all this interest, and it's not true. No one called. No one was interested. No one offered me any money. And that's just like, it's just crazy. That's just crazy. That's wild. It continues to be insane to me that nobody thought that Bruce was a fit. Because everybody online like knows how good Bruce Brown is. Like all of NBA Twitter like knows Bruce Brown's been a good player. So it's wild that happened. Look, the free agency stuff is going to be a conversation. There was already there's a comment from Bobby Marks on ESPN today on Twitter about it. We've talked about it at length on the show. The only way that Bruce returns is if Bruce literally looks at his career and says, I feel confident enough in my ability to get another contract that I'm willing to risk it to stay here and win win a title. Right? Like that distinction is important, whether they win or lose the finals. If he says like, I want to play with Nikola another year, he can do a 1-1 and then they can get bird rights and then they can re-sign him at a bigger number. I would just say for a guy that hasn't made that much in his career, this contract's really important. I am constantly of the opinion that like the money will work itself out. And that you should definitely, if you're on a rookie contract and you get offered that extension, you take it because it's the guaranteed money and that sets you up, right? I am also like, it's good for players to sacrifice to try and win. Bruce is 26. Okay. Bruce doesn't have a lot of big contracts coming left. Okay. He missed out because like usually you land one when you're like 22. Okay. Bruce isn't going to get that. This contract matters a ton. If he gets a 4-year deal at like 20 million, 15 million, 4 years, 60, that is a ton of money. And he risks a lot of that by going for another year or re-signing at the 8 million mark. There's just like not a lot of room there. So you got to, I would just say, tell your friends, spread this word that like, if Bruce leaves, that's not the Nuggets' fault and that's not Bruce's fault. That's just the market. Like that's a CBA problem. The Nuggets should be able to re-sign a player of his caliber that's as important to them if they wanted to. I don't know if they're going to want to because they're already paying in the luxury tax. But if they wanted to, there should be more means for them to be able to get this done, but there just aren't. Like there are limitations on what they can offer him. And as a result, his best value is probably on the open market. Jamal talked about he talked about how the defense has kind of come a long way and about how, they invested on that end. And Bruce talked about this too, about how the defense was really bad early in the season and about how they kind of like all come together. Really relaxed group today. They were just relaxed, and why wouldn't they be? Finals don't start for another week. So I think one of the things that's probably good about this rest period is it allows them not just the physical break, but the mental respite as well. And that really, I think, matters. Like, I think you need that mental respite to get away from how intense the playoffs are and how intense, like even a sweep, like those were 4 intense games. Like the Nuggets clearly won. The Nuggets were clearly better, but those games were games that they had to out execute down the stretch. And they were physically daunting, and it was a 7-man rotation, by the end of it. So it's tough. I think this mental break is probably good for them, especially for Nikola. I think it's good for all of them. I do want to note, I pulled these numbers, and I want to let you guys know this. In the finals, When a team has more rest than the opponent, okay? When they have more rest than the opponent going into it, and they're on the road. So you have more rest than the opponent. You're going into game 1. You're on the road. Okay. 1-10 straight up. Okay. You have more rest. You're on the road. 1-10 in those games. If you're at home and you have more rest, 7-2. 1-10 on the road, 7-2 at home. What I would probably tell you is there's a couple of theories that you could take here. This is since 2003, by the way. Disruption. You've been home, you've been in a rhythm, then you have to travel. Then there's all the craziness of the finals because it is pretty nuts in terms of the media stuff. And then you play. Disruption, intense environment, you lose. You're also coming off of a much easier series, right? If you swept, you just played an opponent that you handled, and the Nuggets did handle them. Okay. So that's something to consider here as well. Plus, very simply, if you're on the road, the other team was better. They had a better record. You went on the road and you faced a better opponent. So instead of it being rest versus rust versus whatever, it's just like if you went on the road, you faced a better team and they won most of the time. If you're at home, you're the better team. You won most of the time. This is where like the rest versus rust thing gets really messy because it's like, in my opinion, the rest versus rust question, we just wind up doing post hoc ergo propter hoc on it. Oh, they lost. Well, they were just rusty. I just don't think that they were in the same rhythm as they were before that break. If they win, they look like a fresher team. What a performance. Shows to show you how much those extra days off goes. I don't know that there's anything meaningful to be taken from that. So ultimately, I would tell you that, like, don't be surprised. Now, I will say, by the way, this is going to run into another trend, which is as far as that, if they do have to go on the road to Boston for game 1, I will just tell you, teams that are coming off of a game 7 in the NBA playoffs are awful in game 1 the next round. Awful. Uniformly terrible. We'll have more of those numbers if the Boston Celtics advance the NBA Finals to face your Denver Nuggets. On the other side, I'm going to talk about the media thing. I'll give you my perception on it as somebody that's been in media, that has covered media. Like I've done aggregation. I understand media pretty well. So I will talk to you about some of my thoughts on the conversation on the other side. When we return on Locked On Nuggets, first I need to tell you about Bird Dogs, which are the most comfortable pants and shorts imaginable. Plus, you get the freedom to wear one pair of shorts pants on the golf course to a meeting, a date, or hanging out with friends. They're so comfortable, you can wear them in any sort of environment. I've worn them going to pick up the kids from school. I've worn them going to the store. I've worn them on a workout. I have worn them hanging out with friends. Like, there's so much that you can do, and they look great in all sorts of situations. You get all sorts of great place opportunities to wear these. You can wear them if you're just out there grilling. Nothing more comfortable than wearing the Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. When you enter promo code LockedOnNBA, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. That's at birddogs.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on Friday night. Final segment, I'm going to run through some of the media conversation that erupted after Nicole Aesthetic posted the Chris Mannix interview, where he talked about how the Nuggets aren't interesting. And then Chris went on Altitude, and then Chris talked about how it's the biggest story in Denver sports is the unavailable of the RSN. Like, we haven't talked about this, as if we haven't constantly. I've talked about it. I've written about it. Mike Singer's talked about it. He's written about it. Vinny Benedetto's talked about it. He's written about it. DMVR's talked about it. They've written about it. Ryan Blackburn's talked about it. He's written about it. Jenna Garcia's talked about it. She's written about it. This is a conversation. We've already had this conversation. It's old, and I have more stuff to say about, like, why it's been dumb. I more want to get into, I think, not explanation, some of my thoughts on just like how this stuff balances out. Okay. I'm going to tell you, Vic Lombardi has talked about it. That's for sure. Oh, by the way, Chris did have Harrison win on his podcast. So go check that out. Go support Harrison. Go check out Harrison. Show Chris Mannix how many Nuggets fans there are. Go check that out. I think one of the things to keep in mind here, I want to start on the other side of this because I am someone that I'm always kind of seeking to validate the opponent's view in the hopes that we can find a common ground. Like if I validate something that you've said, the hope is that you'll validate something that I have, and then we can both agree, like, okay, you have some good points and I have some good points. Here's where we can find middle ground. Okay. Like common ground. Okay. The Nuggets as a team, this is not Kroenke. This is the players in the locker room have resisted coverage. They got a lot of coverage in 2000 when they first kind of started getting onto the scene, and they got really worn out by it. Now, how much of this is Nikola and his particular feelings about media? Sure, it's a ton. You take on the identity of your star player, but like Jamal also has some resistance to it. Doesn't want to do a lot of one-on-ones. Aaron hasn't really done any one-on-ones. I'm not sure how many folks have tried from national media. MPJ, there tends to be a little bit of concern there because MPJ tends to say things that will make headlines. But some of this is like the Nuggets have resisted coverage. They don't do the Sunday sit-downs interviews. They don't do the last 2 seasons in March, there has been a high-profile interview with Joel Embiid. In 2022, it was, you'll never guess it, a writer from Sports Illustrated by the name of Chris Mannix, who wrote an in-depth article on Joel Embiid's MVP case and how he didn't care and didn't want it. But this year it was Shams Charania who got the turn on the wheel. Nikola doesn't do that. Does not want the attention. Honestly, didn't want the award this year. So this is like, some of this is how the players treat it. I'll also say this, as a member of that media room, this media room, I don't feel that we're soft. There are soft media rooms in some other franchises. Los Angeles Lakers. But like, we cover the team. We're not trying to be antagonistic. It's pretty reasonable. Like, they're reasonable people in there. We've asked hard questions when we need to ask hard questions. We've asked the questions that need to be asked when they need to be asked. On top, but in general, we don't get personal. We're not antagonistic. And almost none of us are showboating, trying to like be the center of attention in the press conferences. So like, I've had a problem with like why there's such a problem doing the media. We're not that bad to deal with. We'll get you in, we'll get you out, we'll get you out the door. It's part of the job. You don't have to like it, but I also don't think that there's any sort of reason to think that we're that terrible when I've been in other media rooms with other teams. Okay. That's just me. That's my personal feeling on it. That said, there are structures in place in national media that prevent the opportunity to go do things like come to Denver, fly in, spend a couple days with the team, and cover it. If the team's not going to give you access, no editor is going to be like, yeah, you should go out there and write about them. You know why? Because access is what sells. If you have have a unique quote from Nikola, that's worth that investment. Otherwise, you're just sending him out to watch a game and get like the same quotes that everybody else has got, and there's no ROI on the expenses for that. You got to justify the travel budget, right? If you say like, well, you can cover him from home, the Ringer has, right? Rowan from SI has. Like, folks have written about them. The Ringers, I think, has written a lot about them. SI actually has written a lot about them. Like, those pieces have been there in the media. However, when we get to the TV side of it, that's when we start to find a little bit of a difference. Those folks do not take the time. Most of the people that have a large media presence on television do not choose to make time in their schedules to watch League Pass. I haven't grilled them on their habits, but it's pretty evident when you listen to them talk or you follow the conversations that if you have a large television presence, you're not going to be on League Pass. It takes you being a sicko to do what most of us do, which is like I'm watching random Orlando Magic games. Not even this year when they were fun. Last year, right? I watched the Rockets this year. Made my eyes bleed, but I watched the Rockets because like I want to know this league as well as I can. But a lot of people can get through on television by just following headlines, by just going over the top stuff. Zamora asks, what do they get paid for? And the answer is they get paid for engagement. So there's a self-defeating cycle here, okay? If I talk about the Lakers, I'm going to get more engagement, whether it's on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or television. I'm going to get more attention, which then fuels how important the Lakers feel, which makes people pay more attention to them so that when I talk about them, there's more people that it attracts. It's a vicious cycle. And it really is, and that moves beyond like, that's like a pragmatic view of it, which is you can shortcut your way to efficiency in generating content. If I just write about LeBron and I just write about the Lakers and I just write about Steph and the Warriors and I just write about the Knicks and I just write about Embiid, I'm going to do pretty well because those things are going to move users. They're going to move units. It's what sponsors want to see and be like, yeah, we want to put our money behind that because that's like an attractive piece of content because I know that even though I work at a company and don't follow the league every night. That's the pragmatic view. The other side of this, and I say this to you as somebody that has hung out with these people and liked them. Like, I have a hard time with some of this because, like, I like a lot of these people. Like, I consider them friends. Well, I used to consider them friends and colleagues. Not as much anymore for various reasons, right? But I will say this. Like, I think most of these writers are great, and most of these people are smart, and most of these people have the best of intentions. And I will also say this, there is a feeling that writing about the Lakers is important. And writing about the Celtics is important. And the Warriors reached that level after the 2016 season. Like, you win 73 games, you're watching a historic team. They went from like, oh, hey, they won the title, that's cool, to like, this is a thing now, right? People are lining up to get in the building to watch Steph's warm-ups. It feels important. Which completely disregards the fact that our job is to make the sport interesting for you. I'm all about understanding audience and being like, and this does get to be like a tricky point with a lot of folks where some editors and managers will tell you, look, all we're doing is following what the conversation is. This is what people want. And they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But the difference is you do have to present them with options for them to know. If you only feed them on today's show, is LeBron a fraud? On today's show, LeBron to the Warriors? If you only feed them that, that's all they're gonna know. And I commented the other day that the other sports don't do this stuff. And I got a lot of pushback on that. I got a lot of likes on that tweet, but I got a lot of pushback on that. And here's what I would say is that the other sports have mechanisms for talking about the game, breaking down pitching and the details on a pitcher's specific movement as it goes in, as it slides across the plate. Or about the power and trajectory, or about the defensive adjustments. Football does an awesome job. It's a behemoth, so it gets to. You can't have too much football, so you can do this stuff. But that happens. Even watching NHL, there's in-depth breakdowns of the game itself. The pregame shows before the Avs finals last year were not, is Nathan McKinnon going to leave in free agency? I love the transactional nature of the NBA. I love it. I think it's cool. I think trades are such a good mechanism for the league. It's cool for you to be able to tell with your friends, like, hey, would you trade so-and-so for so-and-so? I think that mechanism is really good for the creativity of the minds that are attracted to the game. But when we start to get only into the idea of transactionalism along certain paradigms of teams, where now this is the efficiency I talked about with Howard Beck. We're taking what is popular to talk about, transactionalism. Okay. What's also popular to talk about? Lakers. All right, let's get it thinner. We're only going to talk about the Lakers and transactionalism. What's even more talk about? We're talking about trading only for Kyrie Irving. So we're just going to talk about the Lakers. And now you're in this thin stripe of coverage. And no one knows that in Denver, there's a 7-foot Serbian dude dealing on a night-to-night basis that when you watch him, you're marveled and amazed. And you're like, this is really fun to watch. This is great basketball. It may not be great engagement content, but it's great basketball. And we have to honor that. So, for the Action Network, I wrote an article that's 25 interesting things that were just off the top of my head. I just sat down and was like, all right, I'm just going to write it. And I just spat out 25 reasons I think the Nuggets are interesting. And it's all sorts of stories from all the years I've been covering the Nuggets from during this run. I have a lot more from actually before Nicola showed up. If you want to go check that out, you can. You can find it on the Action Network at actionnetwork.com. Finally, I'll just say this. This is going to fall on deaf ears, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Don't let this week be about that for you. Your team's in the NBA Finals. Your team's in the Western Conference champion in the NBA Finals because it just swept the Los Angeles Lakers. You're at the top. This is your moment. Savor this. Watch highlights. Watch the Sombor sling, as Malone called it today, over and over again. Go back and watch old clips. Go back and listen to old podcast episodes that you like. Think about all the times when you were like, I don't know if this team's going to have it. Because I know you did, because you tweeted that at me. Think about all the times that you were so disappointed about after Jamal's injury. Think about all the times that you have come up short. All the times that you've wondered, can this team actually do it? I know, but can they? We never win. Think about all those times and realize that you are here. The NBA Finals start June 1st, and your team, the Denver Nuggets, are in it. Enjoy this time. This is the good time. We don't know what next year's going to look like. I will guarantee you, after the season, the immediate thing, win or lose, is going to be about the Nuggets are here to stay. They'll be, if they lose, they'll be back. If they win, it's like, why can't they? Don't let that get into your heads. I'm asking you. Adam's going to try. I'll just warn you right now. He's already set for Dynasty talk. Savor this, because you just don't know what it's going to be. But your team's here. They're certified. They're validated. The Nuggets run the West, and they're going to play in the NBA Finals. Enjoy that and let all this media nonsense fall by the wayside, because it should not, and you should not let it impact how much you enjoy this for you as a fan and for your team. Let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us on a Friday night. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again. If the Heat clinch, we'll get you a post-game reaction that's going to talk about the early thoughts on the Heat and that matchup. If the Heat lose and the Celtics win, we will hold off, and we'll have a show on Monday trying to fill some time before we get into the finals matchups, regardless of who wins. Enjoy your holiday weekend. We appreciate you guys being part of the show. Make sure to hit us with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to hit us with a like and subscribe on YouTube. It's the best way to support the show. You guys, we've grown so much in these playoffs. We're having such an unbelievable month, and we appreciate all that support. Help us keep it going. Send it to a friend. If you got a friend that's you've known that we're a little into the Nuggets, but now is hardcore into it because they're in the finals, don't look down on them. Be like, that's awesome, man. You know what you should do? Listen to this podcast that we listen to every day. called Locked On Nuggets. Also the DNVR show, but also Locked On Nuggets. Do that for us. We'll see you guys again next time. Thanks for joining us. Till then, I'm Matt Moore. We'll see you again next time on Locked On Nuggets.